Pētera Sam Lotu-Iiga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's a pleasure for me to take a call on this, the second reading of the Gambling Harm Reduction Amendment Bill, sir. And I also want to thank Te Roroa Flavel, sir, for his leadership on this issue, an important issue, not just in my community and communities in Maungakiekie and South Auckland and Auckland, but across this country. This is a scourge that certainly, this gambling scourge, that needs to be addressed, and we are doing it with this bill. I want to acknowledge Te Roroa Flavel for his leadership and soon-to-be leadership of the Mana Party. He's been a great backbencher, and he will make a fine leader going forward in this Parliament and with the Māori Party going forward, sir. And it is a pleasure for me to support this bill. Sir, across this House, we have always accepted, sir, that gambling is a legal activity. It is a legal activity, and what this bill does, sir, it regulates the access to gambling facilities, sir. It attempts to minimise the harm around that activity, sir. But gambling is not just the scourge of my communities, but, sir, we all know that there are teachers, there are lawyers, there are even politicians that gamble. So let's not say that this is a problem defined to one area, but across the country, sir. It's also personal, sir, because I've had numerous constituents that come into my electorate office in Onehunga, in Maungakiekie, and I've seen the broken relationships, sir. I've seen kids who have who've gone without the essentials, sir, broken families, broken relationships, and it affects our communities right across this country, sir. Now, we just heard Ruth Dyson talk about how her and other experts, sir, I don't know how she can claim to be an expert alongside these other experts, so supposed experts, that have made submissions on this bill, sir. She named an academic, she named the Problem Gambling Foundation, whom I acknowledge, and the Salvation Army, who do good work. But, sir, what this bill does is that it enables the introduction of harm minimisation devices through regulation. That's one thing. And it will enable us to update regulations as these new technologies are advanced, as they are developed. And we've seen how in Australia they've had difficulties introducing some forms of these technologies. And so we've given, within this bill, greater flexibility through regulations to allow us to introduce those technologies when they become clear that they have an effect on problem gambling. Secondly, sir, this bill will enable us to ensure a minimum percentage of gambling proceeds will generally go to community groups in the area and where they are raised, sir, and that allows for flexibility. I know the last member that spoke talked about how there was concerns that people were benefiting outside the areas of where the funds were generated, sir, but we had some strong submissions from national organisations and regional organisations who would be impacted adversely should the corralling of funds be taken too extreme to local organisations, sir. And the third point I want to raise, sir, is that the bill also gives more flexibilities to councils to allow venues to move outside of low socioeconomic neighbourhoods where that is supported by the venue and that local community, sir. And we saw in one of the submissions where maps were shown of high deprivation areas where there are high concentrations of these machines, and certainly, sir, our government, this national government, supports the movement of those machines away from those communities where they have been known to damage local people who have gambling problems. So, we made some changes at the Select Committee, and the original bill did talk about harm minimisation devices that may be introduced through licensing conditions. Well, sir, we thought that introducing it on an ad hoc, case-by-case basis through licensing conditions wasn't the appropriate way to go down in terms of progressing the bill. We thought that regulations would enable us to introduce new technologies on a mandatory basis nationwide rather than through those individual licences, and I think this provision will work going forward. Although I'm not entirely happy about how regulations are delegated to officials, to ministers and future parliaments, personally I think measures should be in the primary legislation. It should be debated in this chamber. However, In my view, this particular clause will establish better technologies, more flexibility going forward, and it will go towards minimising harm, sir. In terms of venue transfers, the original bill would have allowed councils to shut down venues and ban gambling. And in our view, as I said earlier in my contribution tonight, gambling is a permitted activity, it's a legal activity, and this goes a step too far, sir. So what we've said is that we will support the transfer of venues out of low socioeconomic neighbourhoods and into areas like the central business districts of various cities and provinces. So we support that. I think it is a good measure. It supports the sinking lid policies that many councils already have in place, and it may interest the House. It may interest the House, and I know Denise Roach there is a former councillor in Auckland. It may interest the House that the number of pokie machines in this country has actually declined since this national government has come into power. It had, in the last 4 years, it's declined on average 550 machines a year. 550 machines a year, Mr Bakshi. And what that translates to, sir, is 11.2% reduction in the number of pokie machines under this national government. And that's something we should be proud of as a national government, and that's something that the opposition parties do not want to talk about, that the amount of pokie machines in this country has come down. So when you translate the 230 machines that is under the convention centre deal, just over 1% of the total pokies in this country, quite an insignificant amount of machines, and you think that the sky is falling. Andrew Little, or Chicken Little, thinks that sky is falling when we're doing a convention centre deal tomorrow. It's first reading tomorrow, when it's only 1% of total pokies in this country. 1% of total pokies in the country. Furthermore, Mr Speaker, the annual expenditure on pokie machines is falling. In 2008, when this national government took over, $912 million. $912 million. And today, sir, I can happily say it's gone down to $840 million. So there is less money going into pokie machines today than under the Labor government. The people opposite were responsible for $912 million, and it's $840, sir, and that is 8% less money going into pokies, 8% less damage in our communities. So that's something we can be proud of. So we'll debate that issue tomorrow night. But, sir, what I'm saying, sir, is that local distribution of proceeds, 80% of gaming, the original bill had 80% of gaming proceeds to be distributed in the local area. As I've already said, it really is about having the flexibility in the legislation through regulations, because what sports clubs and other social service organisations that rely on gaming trust funding, what they said to us inside of the select committee, they said, we don't want the adverse consequences of you messing around with the funding. It wasn't represented as the last member, Ruth Dyson, the so-called expert in gambling, said. It wasn't about them saying that the money would go, it was about them saying that they were concerned that the risks were that they wouldn't get the same amounts of money under another distribution mechanism, sir. So that, I think, is really important, sir. I just want to say this government is already announced earlier this year $55 million with a 3-year strategy for problem gambling, $25 million frontline intervention, $20 million for public health services, and $6.6 million for research evaluation. This government is doing more than any other government to minimise harm around gambling. This government has reduced the number of pokies in our communities, and this government, building the convention centre in 3 years, will produce jobs and opportunities to feed the kids of the families that need those jobs and opportunities. This government stands for harm minimisation, jobs and opportunities, and that's why the people of New Zealand support our government. Thank you very much, sir.
Denise Roche.